Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Dirks, and on behalf of ACRL and Choice, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Solving the World's Problems, Connecting Students with International Government Information for Country Case Studies, which is sponsored by World Bank. Today's discussion is one in a series of sponsored webinars from ACRL and Choice that addresses new ideas, developments, and products of interest to the academic library community. Free to users, these structured 60-minute live presentations provide the opportunity for interactive discussions of important new issues and developments in academic librarianship by librarians, vendors, authors, and other interested stakeholders. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few features of the webinar software. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. Along the left-hand side, you will see a chat panel that you can use to submit questions or comments. We will spend some time responding to your questions during the program, so please feel free to submit these throughout. You will also see a separate box for technical questions. Please feel free to use this feature for any technical difficulties you may be experiencing, so our production team can troubleshoot them privately. And finally, please note that today's program will be recorded and all registrants will receive follow-up instructions on how to access the archived version. Our speakers today are Annalisa Sklar and Shauna Wagger. Annalisa is the Social Sciences Collections Coordinator and Librarian for Political Science, Law and Society, Environmental Policy, and International Government Information at the University of California, San Diego, where she has worked since 2007. Prior to working at UC San Diego, she was at the University of New Mexico. Her research interests are eclectic, ranging from government information to popular culture. She serves on the editorial advisory board of Journal of Popular Culture and has rotated through a variety of ALA Government Documents Roundtable and ACRL Law and Political Science section committees. She spends a great deal of time thinking about how to most simply describe the research process to students, deliver library-funded information sources in a more streamlined way, and acquire resources for user text mining, tooting the horn of open access and open data, and advocating for new purchases and subscriptions within the UC San Diego Library. Shauna is the Manager of Publishing Systems and Electronic Product Development and the Product Development Manager for eLibrary at World Bank Publications. She's worked in publishing for more than 20 years, including 14 plus years in electronic product development. Before joining the World Bank, Shauna developed electronic products in scholarly reference at Congressional Quarterly Press and Alexander Street Press. Finally, Devika Levy, also from the World Bank Publications, will be responding to questions in the chat box throughout the presentation, and will pose your questions to Annalisa and Shauna at the end of today's session. At this point, we're ready to get started, so I will turn the floor over to Annalisa.
Okay, well, thank you all for attending. I just want to give you sort of a brief overview of our plan for today. My plan is, so Shauna and I have split up the hour, and my plan for my section is to spend the first half of it talking about what we see in the classroom, and the second half talking about different kinds of resources that would be useful to students seeking country-level information. Then I will turn the floor over to Shauna, who will give you a more in-depth overview of the World Bank eLibrary platform. And so, as Mark said, I keep hitting the wrong button on my mouse. I apologize. I am Annalisa Sklar from UC San Diego. And so I have a few caveats here before I get started that, just to give you some context, I am an international government information librarian, but I am certainly not the only expert. There are much more experienced international documents librarians out there. If you are attending today, please feel free to add anything or correct anything that I say using the chat box, and feel free to share any tips of your own as well. I think that could be very valuable for the audience. I really did intend this presentation for new or sort of accidental international documents librarians, and this really is sort of the 50,000-foot overview of promoting international government information in the undergraduate classroom. So I'm just going to touch on a lot of things really briefly. And if you're not familiar with them already, I really encourage you to check out some of the additional resources out there. Godort has a whole international documents task force, which even has a document on international government information competencies for beginning government information librarian government information librarians. There's a listserv called IntelDoc-L for international documents librarians and people with those kinds of questions. And the ACRL Law and Political Science section has a vendor publisher liaison and review committee that has written several newsletter reviews. And in fact, several of the highlights that I do for the products in the second half of my session are based on reviews that I co-authored with my colleagues Nadine Hoffman and Catherine Morse. So thank you guys for letting me build on that. And all of the links that I talk about throughout the slides are at the very end of my portion of the deck. So no need to madly scramble through to write those down. So today I'm really talking about political science education because that's what I know. But I think these trends are happening throughout the social sciences, so I hope this is useful to people beyond the world of political science and international studies. But for context, the American Political Science Association had a task force that did a report in 2011 on political science in the 21st century. And they found that a consistent theme throughout the various sections of the APSA teaching and learning conferences is the vital importance of linking political science to real-world events. So that's sort of the foundation for the idea behind this webinar and sort of what I do. So trends in political science education, the instructors are really trying to enhance student learning through high-impact practices, especially experiential learning, which is a philosophy of learning where experience or hands-on learning is combined with critical reflection. And there are just sort of two main flavors of experiential learning. There is field-based learning, which is things like internships, practicums, cooperative education, and service learning, sort of the students getting out into the real world, basically. And then there's classroom-based experiential learning, which is things like role-playing and games and case studies, simulations, presentations, and group work where the students are required to apply the skills that the course is trying to teach them. And this is certainly being discussed in the political science literature and political science teaching literature. So some of the core themes that are being written about are, again, simulations, active learning, service and placement learning, critical thinking, and the whole broad concept of experiential learning, teaching writing skills, problem-based learning, all of these things that librarians get really excited about. And so what I'm seeing here at UC San Diego is, maybe this is flipped a little bit, but I'm seeing a lot of problem-based learning in the classroom, so assignments like writing a policy brief or creating a dossier, which is kind of a fancy annotated bibliography, with citing sources from not just scholarly literature, but anybody who would be interested in the topic, whether it's nonprofits, IGOs, random people on the ground. I'm seeing group projects, both in sort of formal research papers, and then there was an instructor who was working, having the students do more sort of scholarly blogging as a group. We had a presentation from the Wiki Educational Foundation, and now I have an instructor who's really interested in doing a class where they will be updating some Wikipedia entries. Of course, then we have good old-fashioned research papers. And then I'm also seeing service learning, where usually interns who have had some sort of placement then have to write a paper on a related topic. And we're also seeing simulations, so I have to admit I'm not seeing as much library traffic from the simulations as I am from the longer written assignments. So how do we as librarians approach this? There is some documentation, of course. We have some guiding documents. The LPSS does have political science research competency guidelines that are fairly good and have some good examples of what students should be learning. They are based on the old ACRL information literacy competency standards, but I believe they will be revised shortly. I think that's certainly something that the section has been talking about. And then, of course, there's the new ACRL framework for information literacy for higher education. That is the basis for all of what we do in the classroom, or at least what we're trying to do. And, so the reality, though, is that the way to deal with these assignments is going to be your favorite approach to the one-shot. So for me personally, I've been really struggling to provide enough active learning. I work with a lot of classes that are based in lecture halls, and they're really big. My students turn out not to really like games. They just sort of look at me like, nice try. They're very polite about it, but they don't get really enthused about games. So for me, what I've done is I've developed this little mini workbook that I have them follow along with in class, so that at least when they leave the class, they have something written down and something to get them started and a little bit of brainstorming on their topic, and something that they can look back at when it's time to actually do their own research. And of course, I also have a LibGuide, because that's what we do. And on that LibGuide, I generally lead them through finding background information, finding books, scholarly articles and literature, finding news, and then finding reports, documents, and policy information. And there we go. And okay, so, and today, of course, we're really talking about the reports, documents, policy information chunk of what I do. And by what I really mean is I struggle also with trying to figure out how to describe this all in the size of a LibGuide tab. But what I'm really talking about is this is my catch-all section for gray literature, report issuing organizations, so government information, including international government organizations, non-governmental organizations, think tanks, etc. So all of these sort of non-scholarly groups. And why do I like to promote these to my students? And I also often have to promote them to the faculty who wouldn't think of using them as their first choice. And frankly, these kinds of materials do really well on the CRAP test when it comes to finding information about current events. So, these organizations they disseminate information really quickly, often more quickly than the scholarly literature. They cover real-world events very well, often a little bit more granularly than you see in scholarly literature. These organizations and the people creating these documents are usually experts actually doing the work, and so they know a particular topic or geographic area really well, and they're usually pretty credentialed and experts and problem solvers, even if they're not academics. And of course, these are documents that are to inform policymakers and other actors. So they really usually help students really get a good grasp of the main issues relating to their topic. So how do we find these things? Most of the organizations now publish their materials online, and so many of my colleagues have created over the year these great Google custom search engines that you can embed on your site. The list is really long, and you can see my list keeps getting longer and longer, and I don't think I created any of these, so thank you to the people who did. There are links again at the end of the slide, and hopefully I've listed the correct creators' names in those slides as well. But these search engines are great for quick and dirty searching of information that's available online. Students love them because it's Google and it's pretty easy. You don't always have a lot of control, but it's Google, it's easy, and it's a good way to get to the heart of that information. But at the same time, there are these more formal tools. So these online library collections that are generally built by the IGOs themselves. And my caveat here is that UC San Diego does subscribe to some of these, but not all of these. And as I mentioned, some of these reviews do expand on an article that I worked on with Nadine Hoffman and Catherine Morse back in 2015. This is where I sort of transition to the second half of my presentation, where I'm going to be talking about some of these products a little bit more. We're touching on these products a little bit more, and so I'm going to be talking about 7 different IGO iLibraries or eLibraries that are out there. And so the first of which is the OECD, which is one of the big ones. The OECD was established in 1961, expanding on the OEEC, which was created in 1948. It's got 34 member countries, which are mostly advanced economies, so there are some emerging markets. And its mission is to promote policies that will improve the economic and social well-being of people around the world. And so the OECD iLibrary is one of these big iLibrary products out there. And it's actually become a platform that other organizations are using as well. It is a freemium subscription, so you can subscribe, but you can even if you don't subscribe, you can still read most of the documents online. You just can't download them. So it's useful just to get this information, even if you aren't a subscriber. Most of the coverage of this iLibrary does generally cover the OECD member countries, so it does cover, again, these emerging markets, emerging economies that are of interest to the OECD member countries as well. And it covers a very wide variety of topics. So an example of how I used this in a class, I taught a political comparative economy class, and the students had to pick 2 developed countries and compare 3 policies like family leave, retirement, pensions, healthcare, sort of these social economic policies. And so immediately I said, OECD iLibrary. And so as you can see, there is a whole section in the OECD iLibrary on social issues and migration and health. And so I suggested the students come poke around in here while they were looking for topics, because there are a lot of documents that would compare multiple countries on any of those different policy issues. So the OECD, as I said, is a platform now that multiple organizations are using as their iLibrary platform. One of the other organizations that I guess is contracted with the OECD is Norden. And Norden is a small IGO whose member countries, as you might suspect, are the Nordic countries. And so Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and the Faroe Islands, Greenland, and the Åland Islands. It began with interparliamentary cooperation, the Nordic Council in 1952, and then expanded in 1971 with a body for intergovernmental cooperation as well. And again, its mission is the cooperation among the Nordic countries and promoting Nordic regional interests. So it's a smaller organization. Again, it's the freemium option. So here at UC San Diego, we actually don't have a lot of deep research into Nordic issues, but I was still able to access the materials, though again, not download them. And they publish about 100 ebooks every year on Nordic topics. And so with that same type of assignment, Norden iLibrary would be a great place to look for students who were specifically interested in the Nordic countries. So for example, here's one on parental leave, childcare, and gender equality in the Nordic countries, which would be absolutely perfect for a student who had that assignment if they were doing one of the Nordic countries. And there's always at least somebody doing the Nordic countries because they're interested in how the welfare state deals with these issues. Also on the OECD iLibrary is the Commonwealth iLibrary. And the Commonwealth, I believe, was actually the first IGO to contract with the OECD. It was established in 1949. It's got 53 member countries. Most of them have historic ties to the British Empire, but not all. So several of the recent editions were not originally part of the British Empire. 31 of those 53 member countries are small states, many of which are island nations. So their material is particularly useful for people looking at climate change on small islands, all those people who are going to be underwater because of the rest of us being irresponsible. And again, it's that same freemium option where you can read the materials but not download them if you're not a subscriber. But if you are a subscriber, you can download them. And they publish about 30 new ebooks or working papers every year. And as an example, here at UC San Diego, we have a big Melanesian collection, and we have interest on this campus in Melanesia, obviously. And we also have a lot of people who are interested in various issues of sustainability. So, for example, here is a chapter specifically on creating a national sustainable development strategy in Papua New Guinea from a larger item that was called Tools for Mainstreaming Sustainable Development in Small States. So again, you could get this chapter level information really easily, even if there isn't a full book or working paper on the organization or on the country that students are looking at. And the final, I believe this is the final organization that has contracted with the OECD iLibrary is the United Nations, which was founded in 1945, kind of a big deal. It's 193 member states, and its mission and work is guided by the principles listed in its charter, which are very big and noble: to maintain international peace and security, to develop friendly relations among nations, to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems, and to be a center for harmonizing the action of nations. The UN iLibrary is very new. It launched just in February. We have not subscribed yet, and I have to admit that before prepping for this presentation, I hadn't really played with it. Its plan is to be a single digital destination for publications, journal, and data published by the UN Secretariat and its funding programs, and they plan to add about 500 new titles each year. To be honest, I haven't used it very much, and I really struggled to pull out something that would be really interesting, which is why I wound up just doing a screenshot of their most recent 2016 presentations, which I don't even think you can see. But most of what I'm seeing is lots of international statistical reports, but I think it's still growing. So there are a couple of country things in there, but I think they are adding publications as they go. Until that product was launched, I had mostly been showing students UnBizNet, which is the catalog of UN documents and publications that's indexed by the UN Dag Hammarskjöld Library and the library at the UN office at Geneva. It does also include catalog records for commercial publications that are held in the library collections that are not available to everybody, but it does link to many full-text documents. They started with full text of 1979 onward, but they keep adding more and more older documents. And as an example here, I was working with a student who's doing a paper on women's rights, or lack thereof, in Iran, and I found some really good primary sources, like statements on the status of women with full text links in multiple languages here in UnBizNet. So there are lots of options for finding UN documents. And the final thing that I just wanted to mention is that the UN also does have its own data portal called UN Data, that's data that's freely available. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the iLibrary grow, but I've been pretty happy with UnBizNet and UN Data so far. All right, so the next organization I'm talking about is the European Union, which doesn't have an eLibrary per se, but they do have an online bookshop, so I wanted to include them. And so the EU is the successor to the European Economic Community, which was created in 1958. Its current members are 28 European countries. We'll see what happens next week with the Brexit vote. It began as a purely economic union, but now it covers most political and policy areas. And unlike some of the other organizations like the Commonwealth, it is based on the rule of law, so all of its work is based on treaties agreed on by its member countries. And it has representative democracy both at the citizen level and the member state level. So the EU has this online bookshop that's managed by the Publications Office of the European Union, and it is a little bit of a misnomer because it's an archive of full-text documents that are free in electronic version in PDF and ebook, and it covers more than 50 languages. So it's a really rich resource for finding publications related to Europe. For example, a really big topic here at UC San Diego, and I'm sure throughout the country, is the European refugee crisis. And there are lots and lots and lots of very current documents about different aspects of being a refugee in Europe. And again, it's free in full text. All right. Another organization that has, another large historic organization that has an iLibrary, an eLibrary, is the IMF. And it's another one of those organizations with its roots in the fallout of World War II, established in 1944. It's got 189 member countries, and its purpose is to ensure the stability of the international monetary system. And its mandate was actually updated in 2012 to include macroeconomic and financial sector issues. So pretty much anything that involves global issues around money, the IMF is your expert. And the IMF eLibrary is actually a subscription database. UC San Diego has been a long-time subscriber of this particular one, so I have been told by our rep that one of the perks of being a subscriber, though, is that you do get access to your purchased content. Even if you do decide to cancel, they will send it to you on some sort of portable media. And the eLibrary contains IMF-produced periodicals, books, working papers and studies, data and statistical tools, and again, sort of anything to do with money, the IMF is your go-to source. For example, again, another hot research issue here, and actually the topic of the undergraduate honors thesis that won our library's undergraduate research prize for the social sciences and humanities this year. Hot topic is China's investment role in Africa, and I wasn't even on the committee, and that was still a winning paper and a winning topic. And the IMF covers that topic particularly well. I think there are over 4,000 hits searching Africa and China investment in the IMF eLibrary. The IMF, I do also want to point out, has a separate data portal. They've made it free in the last few years. I will say it is a little tricky to get started with. If you've tried and gotten stuck, my tip is to use the query option rather than the search box. But they do have some very good help screens, as well as some videos to get started. So that's another great resource. And we were all doing a little happy dance because when the eLibrary data became free, it also made the eLibrary itself much cheaper. So if it's something that you didn't think you could subscribe to, it's something you might want to revisit because it's not quite as expensive. And so last but not least, this brings us to the World Bank. And the World Bank is sort of the other big money organization. It was established in 1944, part of the Bretton Woods Conference. The World Bank, if you don't know much about it, is actually 5 sub-organizations, each of which have slightly different lists of member countries. And the purpose of the World Bank Group is to provide financial and technical assistance to developing countries around the world. And the World Bank actually has several different products for providing their documents. One of them is this open knowledge repository. And I'm pointing this out because it's actually really cool. The World Bank was, I believe, the first IGO to have an open access policy and an open access repository. And granted, it does have the limitations that institutional repositories do have, and obviously not the full complete content that you would get in the subscription eLibrary, but I really think the World Bank opened the door for open access in the international government world. So kudos to the World Bank for that. And the World Bank was also pretty revolutionary. I mentioned the IMF opening their data. The World Bank actually opened their data first. And again, kudos for that, for making your statistical data freely available. And in fact, that winning paper that I told you about, the professor who nominated the student specifically mentioned how great it was that the student had been able to use the World Bank data. So World Bank data is super useful for country-level comparisons, especially if you're doing anything with non-developed countries or need sort of every country in the world if the data is available. And it will be included, it is also included in the eLibrary, but it is available for free, and that was really exciting when that happened. And so finally, sort of leading into Shauna's part of the presentation, yes, the World Bank has a subscription eLibrary, and it has World Bank produced books, working papers, journals, data, and statistical tools. Got all of the World Bank's backlist content back to the 1990s, no embargoes, and again, it covers topics related to economic development and poverty reduction. And for example, I was working with a class on success in Africa, which is sort of interesting because usually when you work with classes working on developing issues, they have to find a problem. And this was a class that had to find a problem that had been solved. And so, because development is the World Bank's bread and butter, I always take people to the World Bank eLibrary as the best resource for finding information about any developing countries. So in this case, I was working with a group that had to do success in Botswana, and there's all sorts of this great information in here about Botswana. I think there were, again, 4,000 chapters and documents that came up when you search Botswana and success. And so Shauna will tell you more about the interfaces, bells, and whistles, but it's fairly straightforward just to get this far, and it's all full text and, again, very current information. So before I turn the mic over to Shauna, I just want to sum up a little bit, sort of the basic points I was trying to hit home today. So political science and social science instructors, again, they're trying to introduce active and experiential learning into their classroom. They tend to choose a problem-based learning activity, often a country case study, problem in problem in X in problem Y, how do you solve it? Governmental sources, intergovernmental and non-governmental information is all just ideal for this kind of assignment because it's so authoritative and timely. I gave you the 50-cent tour of a number of these different tools for finding this information that's available for free, but at the same time that there are also these wonderful curated subscription collections that have value-added benefits like mark records, so you can turn them on in your discovery system and make them more findable. So thank you all for listening. As I said, I did include these different links here, so they will be here when you can download the full presentation, but they are there. And I am turning you over to Shauna. Thank you all.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. This is Shauna Wagger, and I want to say many thanks to Annalise for a great introduction to all of these resources. I'll be giving a brief overview of the eLibrary with specific focus on country case studies, data, and our new recommended reading, all of which we hope will help with teaching and helping students do their research and so forth. So as you may know, the World Bank Group is a multilateral institution, and we're focused on eliminating poverty and boosting shared prosperity, and that's where a lot of our sort of overarching mission comes from. So in terms of the eLibrary, I thought I'd start by talking a little bit about what's in the eLibrary. And you can see that we've got a number of types of content here: books, which are often broken into chapters when they're more recent, working papers, the 2 World Bank journals, and we've got also a wealth of other World Bank premium research, whether those are economic and sector work or whether they're systematic country diagnostics, a whole range of gray and other kinds of literature. We've got translations and we've got data as well. So when you and your students and your patrons are looking through the World Bank eLibrary, you'll be able to find all of this kind of information. So now that we know what's in the eLibrary, let's talk a little bit about what it covers. So as Annalisa mentioned, very much focused on economic development and poverty reduction. And we're not just a financial or economic institution. We cover sort of broad social science topics. And you can see from this list of things that we really cover critical social science topics and critical issues, the kind of issues that Annalisa was talking about in her own presentation. So this kind of combination of the research that we do and where we focus can be very, very powerful in terms of helping students and others with their research. So this is a screenshot of the home page, and I'm going to see if I can get my friend the green arrow to show up. There we are. And I just want to introduce you a little bit to kind of the major ways into the World Bank eLibrary. And you'll see right here that there's a gray bar. And this is where you can find all of the major browses of the eLibrary, whether it's a region and country browse, whether it's a topical browse, whether you're browsing translations or books or certain kinds of content, and whether you're browsing data. And so all of these things are available wherever you are in the eLibrary. And just below that, you'll see that we've got our quick search and we've got our advanced search. And again, these are all things, this whole piece is available persistently when you're looking at content, when you're actually in your search results. So it's always easy to start over or to take another look at another way in. Because we're looking at the home page, I just also want to mention a few things. This carousel is where we focus on things that we think will be of interest, whether it's something like this seminar or something important that the World Bank is doing or a really key piece of research or report that people can find in the eLibrary. So this is kind of our highlight section. You'll see down here also that there are new books, new journal articles, new working papers, that kind of thing. So you can always jump to what's newest. And then right over here, there are 2 features, one of which you can't see, but there's a most popular feature, and there's also a news feature. And a news feature is archived, and there's where we also sometimes we'll take things from the carousel above and make a news item, but it's where you and your patrons, your students, your professors can find information about what's really going on in terms of the eLibrary, a few things in terms of the World Bank itself. And finally, the thing that I wanted to mention are the tools. And you'll see up here, for example, my name, and that means when I click in, I've got a whole wealth of tools, whether they're saved searches or alerts, all kinds of things. And you'll also see that there's a subscriber services, and so we have things like Mark Records and KBART and things like that. So just a very brief overview of those things. So one thing that I do want to mention very briefly is everything is powered by metadata. And it's worth mentioning because it's a really important thing. We pay a lot of attention to it, and it does drive the power of the search and the browse, whether you combine it with full text or not. So we just wanted to mention that and list some of the key things that we really work on, whether it's abstracts or keywords, all of those kinds of things. You'll also see that down here you'll see that there are hyperlinked metadata, hyperlinked regions, countries, and that allows you to do a great dynamic search. So let's talk specifically about this particular overview of country and regional material. So what we're showing you here is a great image of what you see, for example, when you search for China. And this is made up of 4 or 5 features that you'll find whenever you search for a country or a region. And for example, here, you'll see basic information about your country or region. If it's a country, there's a flag. You'll also see that we always provide links to other World Bank resources, whether it's a blog, whether it's data, whether it's projects, that kind of thing. And then down here, you find your meat and potatoes. Here you've got all of your search results or your browse results, which are working papers, chapters, all the wealth of content. You'll see right above that there are tools that you can use to download citations, to save this content, all that kind of thing. And then you'll see over here that there's a wide variety of filters that you have to help you drill down into these browse results. And then finally, we want to mention that you'll see this World Development Indicators pane. And for every country or region, we will provide this particular set of data. It's just a very quick overview. When you click into any one of these data points, you'll actually see a time series. And when you click this View More Data, you'll get to a full data panel. And I'll show you that in just a minute. But one of the reasons that we wanted to mention this is because we do have a really great World Bank data site, which Annalise mentioned. And a lot of times what we hear is it's very complicated, particularly for students, to figure out what they're looking at, to understand if they're interested in the environment, what statistics should they be looking at. So one of the things that we've tried to do is to make it a very simple interface and a very simple way to jump back and forward to the things that might be of most interest to you. So this is an overview of all the different kinds of things that you'd be able to find for country or regional research. And how you get there. So you'll see that there are some circles here. And I'm just going to highlight real quickly. This is the region and country browse. When you click this, you'll get a whole list of regions and countries that you'll be able to select one and jump in. You'll see also that there is data browse, and this is where you can also jump into the data. So you can do it from the data panel that we saw in the previous slide, or you can do it right here from this, again, persistent data browse. And finally, you have your advanced search and your quick search. And these, particularly the browses, are very, very easy ways to jump in to what you need to know about your particular country or region. And then, of course, you have the browse and the search option. So one of the things that we've been talking about in this name of the presentation is finding case studies. And so we just wanted to show how easy something like this is. So the only thing that we've done here is put the phrase case study in our quick search. And what this is looking for is case study in a title. It's looking for it in the full text. It's looking for it as a keyword in the abstract, all over. And you can see that when we put this particular phrase in and conducted the search, these are the results that we've gotten. So we can see what it was we searched for, and then we can see that there's a pretty wide breadth of material that we've gotten. And you can see that it's very relevant, recent case studies. So it's very easy if you're interested in a particular type of content as well as a particular country to kind of use the quick search or use the advanced search to find what you need. Now, if you knew that you were looking for a case study on a particular country, you could come to the advanced search, put case study in, and here we've thrown the phrase in and look for it in the title. And then what we've done is we've chosen this other advanced search filter of China. And when we conduct our research, you can see, again, that it's a very targeted set of case studies about China. So you can see, again, that this is what our search term was. This is the filter that we applied. And what this means is that every piece of content in this set of search results is a case study, and it is about China. It doesn't just mention China, but it is about China. And that can be a really powerful way of jumping into really specific information on a particular country, that kind of thing. So let's say that somebody was looking at sort of environmental issues in China, and they might decide that they're interested in carbon dioxide case studies. And again, this is how we've set up the advanced search, very easy. We're looking for a case study in the title, and we're looking for carbon dioxide anywhere. So this will find it whether it's a keyword, it will find it in the abstract, it will find it in the full text. And again, what we've done is we've applied the filter of China. So you'll see over here 2 case studies that are specifically about China and about carbon dioxide and environmental issues. And again, very simple, very targeted results. So now that you or your student or whoever knows that they're interested in carbon dioxide, let's say, they also can go into the data browse. And here, what they've done is gone in and selected the list of indicators. And there's 2 ways to look at the list of indicators. One is by category. And one of the categories, if we scroll down, was environmental. The other category is alphabetical. So however your student thinks, if they know that they're interested in carbon dioxide, they can come on the alphabetical side and look for it. Or if they know that they have to research states and markets, or if they know they have to research the environment, but they aren't sure what kinds of statistics will help them, with that research question, the statistics are also organized in that way. So just to really quickly finish with the data, I'm going to skip ahead one. That when your student has chosen carbon dioxide emissions, they will get this particular set of, this particular data panel. And what this shows is a time series of this particular indicator across all countries. And again, you'll see that China's here. And then we're going to jump to the left. And if the student had clicked on China here, would have toggled to this view. And here you have China, and you have all of the data in a time series about China. And these are the 2 ways that it's very easy to go back and forth. It's very easy to jump into any one of these views. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to show you these 2 views. So it's easy to kind of match the publication research that you do with the data research. And this is something that we're definitely looking to improve. These are just a couple of summary slides that talk about the additional functionality we have with data. And just 2 things that I'll mention. One is the ability to download as a CSV file, and the other is an automatic citation creation feature. And that we heard was a real pain point for people, including ourselves at the World Bank. So we've got an automated citation feature for that. And then we've got a tab that provides version history and other things. And I want to make sure to leave time for questions, so I'm just going to jump ahead real quickly to one new feature that we wanted to mention, and that is a new recommended reading feature. And you can see that it's available right here on the global navigation, and we really built this to help professors build syllabi or to select required or recommended readings for their different courses. All of the information is available within the World Bank eLibrary. We hope it also is a great place for students to jumpstart research. This will be a feature that we're beefing up, but currently topics include climate change, they include gender and economics, sustainable urban development, women and children's health, a number of things like that. And we're looking to update these periodically as well as to add more topics. So this is the kind of information that you get when you select one of those recommended reading lists. And we really did curate these. We talked to a number of librarians and got their feedback. We talked to subject matter experts here. It's organized in terms of what we know is most popular, both from those feedback providers and from our own research, as well as what's most recent or what else is a really important kind of background or other type of research. So we're very interested in hearing feedback on this. So we welcome any kind of comments or suggestions. And finally, these last few slides are about accessing the eLibrary and about sending feedback, subscription information, all of those kinds of things. And I won't spend time on this, but we're happy to answer any questions that we might have on this. And I'm going to say thank you. We really appreciate your attention. Thank you, Annalise. And please let us know what your questions are. Thanks very much.
Okay, I guess we have time for questions. I see there's one, this is Annalisa, and I see there's one question that we had in the chat. and of course my screen just went to sleep, from Michael Honor in Winnipeg, and you were asking about how the UN national account statistics take up a lot of space on the shelf and they're often not used. Yes, we find that to be true with print statistical publications. And you ask if anybody has good guides to share for making use of online UN data sets, which is a absolutely fantastic question. And I don't have a great guide. While Shauna was talking, I was looking at the help screens on UN data. There's a little bit of help information in there, frequently asked questions. Generally, I help people. I start with people by keyword searching, but if you have a guide, I would love it if you would put a link to it in the chat box. And I see that Bonnie Palifka would love to see a recommended reading list on corruption-related issues. And again, I don't have one of those either, though that would be great. I don't know if does the World Bank have something like that?
We definitely, hi, this is Shauna Wagger, and that's a great question. We definitely publish quite a bit and do quite a bit of research on corruption, and we'll definitely take it under advisement to see if we can create a recommended reading list in the eLibrary on that topic. And maybe we will get in touch with you separately to talk a little bit about that. That's a great comment. I also saw that there were some questions also about the Open Knowledge Repository and the World Bank eLibrary. And I know that my colleague Devika gave a great answer about the content. And I thought I would just also explain a little bit maybe the framework in which we see the different platforms that we have. And this is kind of a little bit of a reductive analogy, but we look at the Open Knowledge Repository as a little bit of a takeout restaurant. We want it to be very lightweight. We want people to be able to find the content that they need really easily. We want them to be able to take it away and do whatever it is they need to do with that content to solve their problem or further their research. And we look a little bit at the World Bank eLibrary as a dine-in restaurant. It's got a lot of more sophisticated features, whether that comes from formats and granularity, or whether that comes from the different tools that we've built for users, whether it's personalized search alerts, the ability to download citation information, all those kind of things that fit within the research workflow, as well as the librarian's tools, whether that's the ability to brand it with the university name or to get MARC records, KBART, to manage your IP ranges, get usage reports, all of those kinds of things. They're both very good collectors of the audience and the purpose that they have, and we just wanted to explain that a little bit because they have a little bit of a different purpose. And one, we really want to be that lightweight, find it, take it away, and the other is more stay inside, let us help you do your research kind of thing. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, and I see there's a great question also about discovery services. And we do work with a number of discovery services, if I'm interpreting your question correctly. EBSCO, Summon, I don't have the list with me, but I know that we work through the eLibrary with 5 or 6 of the key search and discovery vendors, as well as some search and discovery vendors that are focused on particular countries. So we definitely do that, and we can share the exact list of that with you afterwards. And this is for the eLibrary.
And this is Annalisa, and I actually work in an organization that doesn't have a really robust discovery system yet, so I can't speak to any of the other resources. But if somebody else has experience with those, please feel free to put that in the chat box. Oh, so here's a great question from Laura Baker in Abilene, Texas. And she asks, what have you found is the best way to search all of these e-reports? Do you go to each one individually, use the customized Google search engines to mass search, or something else? And there are a couple different ways that I go about searching these. Even though we don't have a discovery system, we do get the MARC records for all of the content that we've subscribed to. So these reports do show up like ebooks in our online catalog. So that's one way that people find a lot of this content. I do actually use the Google custom search engines a lot, especially when I'm just sort of doing quick and dirty searching. And if that doesn't get me far enough, then I will go into each interface individually and explore it in a little bit more depth, because the interfaces do have additional search features that sometimes you just can't get through any sort of federated searching. But yeah, usually our catalog and the Google custom search engines are how I get started with a topic. But it depends. Again, with the World Bank eLibrary and a lot of these more developed eLibraries like the IMF and the OECD iLibrary, there are also good topical landing pages, so you can browse by topic or by country. Some of those newer iLibraries on the OECD platform, you really can just only keyword search. So it sort of depends, but with the bigger eLibraries, it's often worth going directly because you're searching across so much content from such a big organization. Great question.
And if you think of questions that come up either for us on the World Bank side or for Annalise on the other side, feel free to email them to us, and we'll be sure to answer them. We really appreciate the feedback and questions that we get from sessions like this.
Yes, thank you. Certainly feel free to email me as well. This has been a great conversation, and I'm really excited to see people excited about international government information. So it looks like we are about out of time. So thank you all. Oh, I see one more question that asks if the Google custom search engines are exclusively for organizations or exclusively for institutions. And no, anybody can create a Google custom search engine. They're free. You just need a list of seed websites that you want to search across. And so the ones that I list in my slides are created by librarians from across at least North America, if not the world. There have been some GoDort projects, and there have been some institutional projects, but generally sort of anybody with an idea can create a Google custom search engine, and if you make it available, then anybody can grab the code and plug it into a guide. And I will say the code on my LibGuides is really messy, but I am happy to share it if you would like to have it to embed on something.
Thank you, Annalisa. Thanks so much. And thank you, Shauna and Devika. This is Mark from ACRL Choice, and I just wanted to take a minute to give all of our presenters a virtual round of applause for being with us today and for presenting so much great information. I know I personally appreciate all of the insight that you guys have provided on all of these different products. So thank you. As a reminder for folks listening in, we have recorded today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from ACRL and Choice that will include instructions on how to access the archived version of this presentation. Thanks again for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope the rest of your day is great.